2,800 lives. 2,800 men, women, and children. Those were the lives lost in California in 2011. Death by murder, death by suicide, and by accidents, all involving guns. And in that year, our state had the same number of fatal traffic accidents. We register our cars, our trucks, our motorcycles. We require drivers to be licensed to show that they know the rules of the road, that they know how to drive safely. Isn't it just common sense to take a similar approach when it comes to gun violence and gun ownership? The gun industry, frankly, has a love-hate relationship with California. They hate our existing gun laws, which are already among the toughest in the country, but they love our marketplace. In 2011, there were some 600,000 legal gun sales in this state, and the industry is very adept at exploiting the fine print to find ways to get around the letter of the law. The time is now to close those loopholes in the circulation, in the regulation, and in the education relating to guns and to gun ownership. The measures my colleagues and I, and you'll hear from our public safety chair and leader in a moment, Senator Lonnie Hancock, the measures we are bringing forward will help reach that goal and once again make California's gun laws the very toughest in the nation. Critics will say that closing loopholes in gun regulations and circulation won't stop the gun violence in our neighborhoods. And they may have a small point, but it certainly isn't a point that carries the day. They'll say there are already too many guns on the street and there's a glorification of violence in our culture. The truth of the matter is that we can save many lives by curbing the proliferation of rapid-fire weapons. We can save lives by getting guns out of the hands of people who should not have them. We can save lives if every gun owner shows he or she knows how to safely handle and store firearms and regulate the sale of ammunition. And if we can save lives, we must act to do so. We respect the Second Amendment, but even Justice Scalia, can't believe I'm citing Justice Scalia, said in his opinion upholding the right of gun ownership in Washington, D.C., that nothing in our opinion should be taken to cast doubt on long-standing prohibitions on the possession of firearms by felons, the mentally ill, or laws forbidding the carrying of firearms in sensitive places such as schools and government buildings, and here's the key phrase, or laws imposing conditions and qualifications on the commercial sale of arms. I want to thank my colleagues for their hard work. Senator Block for his proposal to enhance education and safety requirements for handgun owners and tighten restrictions on loan guns. Senator Leno, who unfortunately cannot be here today, for his efforts to strengthen the armed prohibited person system to collect those guns that are in the wrong hands. Senator De Leon for his work to make sure the background checks required for guns also apply to ammunition. Senator Yee for persevering on the issue of bullet buttons and quickly detachable magazines. Senator Jackson for her measure to update our gun laws, to close a loophole in the current ban against shotguns with revolving cylinders. Senator Corbett for her leadership. These guns and these ammo clips are all legal under California law. Here's basically what we are going to do, and why this package will be the strongest in the nation. Currently, the possession of a magazine with more than 10 rounds is technically legal if it was purchased years ago. And somebody caught with it can simply say, well, I found it, or I purchased it many years ago. It's an obvious loophole that Senator Hancock's bill will close. The bill I'll be authoring with Senator Yee takes his groundbreaking work on the bullet button issue a step farther. Because if you fix the bullet button, the gun manufacturers then find another way to fix and to detach magazines and to allow for a magazine to fire more than 10 rounds, to have the magazine then be detached, to replace it again and continue with a spree shooting. We are going to seek to ban the manufacture of rifles that have detached magazines, period, so that there can't be the kind of loopholes that the gun manufacturers continue to ingeniously but very dangerously and harmfully find. So that's just a little bit of clarification here in terms of what those two measures do and why they are really the next step beyond even what New York, which has a terrific package, is seeking to do and has done. We'd be glad to answer any of your questions. We have the members here who are carrying the specific bills, the mayors, the chiefs. We're happy to answer your questions.
Darrell, would this have been in question without the supermajority in the legislature, this kind of legislation?
No, these bills only require a majority vote. And so this isn't really about the supermajority. We would be introducing this same package, even if we had fewer Democrats. But look, I know that it may be, a flight of fancy, but I would hope that there might be some members of the other party as well that would embrace these common sense measures and that it isn't just a partisan issue. These issues aren't partisan. The victims of violence aren't identified in the papers or by their families as Democrats or Republicans or decline to state. They're people. And we need to do what is smart, what is reasonable, and this package represents just that.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor Villaraigosa, this event is happening at the same time as we're getting word of a manhunt of a former officer from your city and your police chief saying he's armed with an assault weapon. Obviously, if you want to comment on what's going on, that's fine, but it's hard to not draw that to this and your interest in trying to do something about the weapons.
Well, thank you for that question. I was awakened early this morning with a call from the chief about the incident that occurred in Riverside that resulted in one of our officers being injured and a Riverside officer who was killed. You hit it on the head, and so did the pro tem when he said, mayors get those calls, and we get them too often. And that's precisely the point. This isn't about ephemeral, esoteric public policy issues. These issues go to the heart of civil society. When you have the number of people who die every single day across the nation as a result of gun violence and who die in massacres as a result of high-capacity assault weapons and the like, the question is, what are we doing? What do we need to do? So you hit it right on the head. I'm actually going, I'll be on a plane within 50 minutes to get back to the city. But very clearly that is a very graphic and to-the-point illustration of what mayors have to deal with every single day. And that's why the mayors, from the beginning, I'm a founding mayor of Mayors Against Illegal Gun Violence, have taken the lead. And what we've said to the Congress and to legislatures, thankfully we don't have to say it to this one, but what we've said to legislatures around the country, the time is now to act. That we have to address the level of gun violence, which, as I said, is not just a public health issue when you look at the number of people who are killed every year, but a public safety issue, but a public health issue as well.
Any developments you can share with us at this point that you're aware of?
When I got here, I got an update. I don't have any developments that I haven't heard you all talk about. There were two incidents in Torrance, as you know, and one involving a unit from the Hollywood division, another one involving Torrance police officers. There have been sightings all over. Well, not sightings. There have been some indication that he's, moving around, but I can't confirm that at this point.
And if I could follow up, he apparently thinks he has a beef with LAPD from something prior, and of course the department.
No, he's apparently a sick individual.
And I was
That's
gonna
what he
ask
apparently is.
on that. I mean,
There's no beef.
Okay.
There's no beef that someone can have to kill 3 innocent people in the way that he has. So whatever problem he has is mental, and Godspeed to our police officers that we find this individual as quickly as possible.
Very good.
Senator Steinberg, you mentioned that your opponents are going to say that there's maybe minimal steps and that there are already so many guns out there. I mean, a lot of these laws do address the sale and try to make some illegal, but there are so many guns out there now. What can be done to maybe give more power to law enforcement to get the guns that are already out there away from that?
Well, first of all, when you look at Sandy Hook and Aurora, these were legally purchased guns. So these were legally purchased guns. So if you want to talk about some of the mass shootings that have occurred in this country, these measures here in California would go right to the heart of those kinds of incidents. But we also are addressing very aggressively the issue of guns that are already out there. And this was Senator Hancock's hearing last week. Senator Leno's legislation that seeks to appropriate whatever money is necessary. The estimate was $8 million a year for 3 years. I say, why not do $20 million in 1 year and get the 19,000 households that are holding 40,000 prohibited guns, and let's hire the law enforcement officials at both the state and local level, and let's get those guns out of the hands of people who should not have them. So that is a key part of this package.
Senator, as Mayor mentioned, the resolution to act can wither with the passage of time. Do you plan on pursuing this package of bills on the customary legislative timetable or in a more expedited fashion?
I think that's still a discussion to be had with my colleagues, with the Assembly, and with the governor, because obviously we can move as quickly as we want, but it's going to take the other people making the same kinds of decisions. Look, my inclination would be to move these bills as quickly as possible. Absolutely. Absolutely.
We heard last week's hearing that some of the opposition saying you're taking the wrong approach, that you should address criminal activity and also the mental health of some of the people that have these guns.
Well, as you know, we are addressing the criminal activity by going after the 40,000 guns that currently are being held by people who are prohibited by law to have them. On mental health, you're talking to the author of Proposition 63, and I was back in Washington, D.C. 2 weeks ago touting our prevention, early intervention, early screening approaches under Prop 63 as a national model. And we're going to continue to fight this session, both in California and nationally, for more mental health services. But it's not one or the other. It's a combination. As the chief said, there's no single answer. But if you leave any potential answer to the side and don't address it, more people will be hurt and will die. It's about saving lives. And we're going to do everything we can to save more lives.
Senator, I'm wondering about the issue of enforcement. This prohibited persons list already exists, wasn't funded sufficiently, apparently. If you're looking at grandfathering, I mean, you're going to have to go find these things. That's an issue of enforcement. You've got the things coming in over state lines. That's another issue. You're looking at more funding for enforcement. How are you going to ensure that these things actually happen?
The Dealer Record of Sale Fund has $20 million sitting in it right now. I would say the highest and best use of that money, the most important priority, is to go get the guns that are being held by people who by law are prohibited from holding them. And if we need more money, yes. If it's 10 million, 20 million, 25, 30 million, we are all living the fiscal restraint mantra here. We're all doing it. We know what we've been through, and that we cannot recreate a deficit. But the kinds of money we'd be talking about here, 10, 20, 30, 40 million dollars, in the context of a $90+ billion budget to save lives and give law enforcement the tools they need to get these guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them, it's a worthy investment.
What about funding for enforcement of the things that you're proposing today, new regulations?
Well, as these bills move quickly through the process, we'll cost these proposals out. And again, we're here because we will make not only the passage of this legislation a priority, but the funding necessary to make sure they're implemented.
And also, what is the cost of having as many people die at the hands of gun violence? I think the amount that's been estimated is $1 million per homicide. I can't be exact on that, but and speaking to both of these questions, those same people that say we're taking the wrong approach, on the one hand, you heard Wayne LaPierre say at that commercial that he did for 20 minutes where he didn't allow any of you or anybody from the press to ask a question, you heard him say we've got to enforce our gun laws. What he didn't say is his organization has stopped us from from applying our laws, enforcing our laws over the last couple of decades. What he didn't say is they've not approved an ATF director in 18 years. They've been at the lead of that. They don't support the study of gun violence and the epidemiology of gun violence. They now have gone back from what they said in 1999. In fact, he said at a hearing that we ought to have universal background checks, and now they've recanted on that. So those same people have been fighting us for a generation. They don't represent the American people, by the way, because 90% of the American people do agree that we should have universal background checks. The vast majority of the American people do agree that we've got to deal with gun trafficking and straw purchasers. So those arguments have been present for a long time. Thank God we have a legislature that is going to make these decisions based on the facts.
We'll take one or two more. Yep.
Given the changing demographics of California and the fact that, I mean, you're a big champion for mental health services.
Thank you.
And you mentioned that, I know gun violence is big in both the rural and the urban communities, but given the growing demographic of the Latino community, what is your strategy for providing mental health services to Latinos, given that they're the least likely to have access and the least likely to go to seek mental health services?
Well, we are already doing it, but frankly, there aren't enough resources to be able to do it as widely as we need to. Let me give you a number, shocking number. Prop 63, for example, has generated $1 billion a year in additional mental health funding. 25% of the money every year has to be spent on prevention and early intervention, including outreach to the diverse communities of California, obviously including the Latino community. And I could provide you all of the different programs that are going on throughout the state. While that $1 billion has been great, where would we be without it? Over the same period of time, $750 million a year has dropped out of the bottom of the system. So you want to talk about a public health crisis? We need to fund mental health services, and not just for people who might have the propensity for violence, but for people who just plain need help in our diverse communities throughout California. Thank you. We're going to go. Keep going? Okay.
Senator, a couple of members of your caucus so far aren't necessarily, they're not saying yes or no. They're kind of just, holding back at this point. Have you surveyed your caucus as to, their opinions? And
every member of my caucus represents nearly 1 million people, and their vote matters. And I respect their responsibility to study all of these before they weigh in. But I can tell you, I'm confident that we'll be able to get these measures through our Senate. Thank you.
Critics saying already this would make criminals out of currently law-abiding citizens. For instance, removing the grandfathering clause on the clips and that kind of thing. Can you address that?
Why don't you, Lonnie, why don't you go ahead and address this?
there will be a period of time for them to be turned in and disposed of. We're not proposing to make criminals out of everyone or anyone. We are proposing to make clear that if the sale, manufacture, transportation, use is illegal, possession should be too. Again, these are safety regulations, and as our chiefs have pointed out, we are talking about the safety of our children. I do represent a number of cities, Oakland, Richmond, others, where young children have been gunned down using these weapons. I have been to the funerals of police officers shot and killed in cities that I represent, and I know that it isn't just the tragic loss of their lives, it is the devastated lives of their families that continue, and that these are common sense steps. They are used in other countries in the world. The United States has 15 times the gun violence rate of other wealthy countries. We can do things, take sensible steps to cut back on that, and we will.